Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I ask for unanimous consent that all members may have 5 legislative days in which to revise and extend their remarks and submit extraneous material into the record.
Without objection.
Across the country, Mr. Speaker, we have seen workers standing up to corporate greed and fighting for better rights on the job, good benefits, and fair wages. Today, our Congressional Progressive Caucus Special Order Hour is devoted to this topic and to our solidarity with striking workers at UAW plants across the country. This week, the United Auto Workers authorized a strike. And as a long-term organizer myself and as the chair of our 103-member-strong Congressional Progressive Caucus, a caucus that has been at the center of championing labor issues, I am proud to stand in solidarity with the nearly 150,000 United Auto Workers across the country. Let me start today by saying thank you to all the workers who have had the courage to organize, the courage to use their collective power to stand up for better pay, cost of living adjustments, increased job security, and many other critical benefits that they deserve to live with dignity. Unionization is fundamentally about workplace democracy, about the engagement and the priorities of workers, your benefits, your hours, your pay, your priorities. Nobody tells you what those are except the workers themselves. UAW workers are showing us what it means to have collective power, to stand together, and to demand better. Over the last decade, CEOs at the big 3 automakers have seen their salaries skyrocket by 40%, and these companies have made close to $250 billion in profits over the last decade. Let me just say that again, $250 billion in profit for these 3 automakers, while workers in the auto manufacturing industry have actually seen their wages drop by more than 20% when adjusted for inflation. Just listen to these numbers. At Ford, the CEO makes 281 times that wage of the median worker. At General Motors, the ratio is 362 to 1. And at Stellantis, which makes Chrysler, Jeep, and Ram, the ratio is 365 to 1. And do these CEOs work hundreds of times harder than their lowest paid workers? The answer is there's nothing at these companies without the workers. There would be no profits without these workers. Why is it that they cannot share in the profits in an equitable way? It is workers who have built the successes of these companies and led them to these record profits. And yet these same workers have reported being forced to work 12-hour shifts for 90 days straight without a single day off. That is just unconscionable. And it is unacceptable for these CEOs to be raking in multi-million-dollar salaries while their workers are forced to strike for the pay raises and the benefits they should be entitled to. UAW has been clear about their demands for months. We are in this situation because the big 3 automakers, their CEOs, have refused to even come to the table in meeting workers' demands halfway. These companies need to come to the bargaining table in good faith. They cannot expect workers to continue working unreasonable hours without job security to make cars that they cannot even buy. In spite of the failure of the big 3 to grant workers' demands, the unionization movement is not slowing down. When their contract expired on Thursday, September 14th, UAW President Shawn Fain announced initial strikes at 3 plants that include nearly 13,000 workers. Still awaiting a fair contract, a new strike deadline of this Friday, September 22nd, at noon has been announced if Ford, General Motors, or Stellantis haven't made progress towards a new agreement. Many of these CEOs frame UAW's demands as unreasonable. But let me be clear about something. Labor costs only make up about 5% of the cost of a vehicle that goes into a vehicle. These companies could raise worker wages to the levels they're asking without raising costs to consumers, and they could still rake in billions of profits. Let's not forget that during the recession, who stepped up and sacrificed? These companies actually got billions of dollars in taxpayer bailouts, and auto workers were the ones who took life-changing cuts to benefits and wages just to keep the industry alive, because they cared about that industry. For the big three, this is a huge opportunity to lead and to repay the American taxpayers and the auto workers who made the sacrifices to keep those companies afloat. These big corporations should be standing with, instead of against, the very workers who built their companies from the bottom up. And any management that says otherwise does not understand what workplace democracy means. It is clear that President Biden understands what's at stake. He just recently said, and it's quite unprecedented for a president to say this, and this is a quote, "The big three should go further to ensure record corporate profits mean record contracts for the UAW." We agree. House Democrats and the Congressional Progressive Caucus understand this too. That's why we in the House have passed multiple times the PRO Act, despite it dying in the Senate because of a Jim Crow legacy filibuster. And that's why we're bringing manufacturing union jobs to America in every corner of this country. Unions keep our economy strong. They protect our workers. The power to come together and organize is so important, and it is a right that I will always defend in Congress. So as workers at UAW and other unions across the country push for fair pay and better benefits, we at the Congressional Progressive Caucus, we in the Democratic Caucus, will be standing with you in solidarity today, tomorrow, and forever. It is now my great honor to yield time to Representative Grace Meng from New York, who has been a champion of labor issues and of justice in general.
Mr. Speaker, I rise today to stand in solidarity and speak in support of our auto workers who are currently on strike. Working men and women are the backbone of this nation, and their desire for job security, fair wages, and to simply be treated fairly is something that every working individual deserves. During the 2008 Great Financial Crisis, these workers sacrificed pay and benefits during a time of desperation to help keep their companies afloat. And now, long after these corporations have bounced back, they are making record profits that they refuse to share with their own workers. That is unacceptable and wrong. These workers have ensured that key industries that make our country run stay functioning. And in return for the billions that they have generated, all they want are wages and benefits commensurate with their company's success. That seems fair to me. I am proud to stand alongside the thousands of auto workers that this contract covers, and I hope an agreement is reached soon. I yield back.
Thank you, Representative Meng. It's now my great honor to yield to a member of the Congressional Progressive Caucus Executive Board, a representative from Michigan, who has really been on the front lines of this fight, who has been telling us for months that we need to pay attention to this, and who has been fighting at every turn for workers. Representative Debbie Dingell.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I rise today to stand in solidarity with our UAW workers. I have seen many negotiations in my lifetime, but these are the most important I have ever witnessed and am likely to in my career. The industry is at a crossroads, and quite frankly, the domestic auto industry's future is at stake. We must manufacture electric vehicles here in America to stay at the forefront of innovation and technology in the world. We're competing in a global marketplace, and these workers are critical to it. They are the backbone of the American economy. This is not a talking point moment. This is where the rubber is meeting the road. Too many people are trying to make this an either or about you can protect the environment or you can protect the worker, but you can't do both. We can and must do both. There are a lot of important issues on the table right now, but let's talk about the auto workers. This industry was near bankruptcy in 2008 and 2009, and quite frankly, because of poor management decisions. But nobody wanted to see the auto industry go bankrupt. So the workers stepped up and said, we will give up our cost of living adjustment to help save this industry. In reality, though, it's 2023, and those workers, their wages in real terms are 10% less than what they were making in 2008 and 2009. They just want their wages to keep up with inflation. Workers need to be able to support their families. People really, I talk to these workers. I'm in their halls. I'm not just going because suddenly there's a strike. I'm in a union hall every single weekend. These workers are working overtime shifts just to support their families. It's not fair that someone is a temporary worker for 8 to 10 years and they're not making benefits. It's not right that someone's on the line and doing the exact same job somebody else is making and being paid less because they're a different tier. Everybody in our country benefits when our workers are paid well and paid their value. Auto workers deserve a decent wage and benefits, and by the way, when they do well, it raises all people's wages. We cannot forget that there are many things that we enjoy today, like a 40-hour workday, benefits, sick days, pensions, nurse-to-patient ratio, teacher-to-student ratio, all are safe working conditions. They were negotiated by a union so that we would all benefit. And now I want a competitive auto industry. I am not going to let China or any other country outbeat us. I'm going to work hard for a competitive auto industry. But we need to make sure, as the industry goes through this transition, that we are protecting the workers, that their livelihoods are safe, and they are not left behind. Thank you, Mr. Speaker, and I yield back.
Thank you, Representative Dingell. Before you leave, if you would just engage in a colloquy with me just for a couple minutes. I know you've been on the picket lines with workers. You've talked to striking workers. Can you tell us some of what you're hearing about what people have been giving up, just in terms of their own security, their own ability to take care of their families?
Well, as I said to you, some of the workers, like they were telling me in the halls this weekend how much overtime they have been working just to keep up. But there have been chemical spills that are happening in non-union plants or plants that we've got to talk to the occupation health and safety people about what is happening. There are people that are worried about, there really are workers that have been temporary. So they're getting paid, but they're not getting any benefits. So there are a lot of issues. And by the way, they don't want to see the companies destroyed. Right. They know that their jobs, they need a competitive auto company so their jobs are safe. So what they want is just to be paid a fair wage for the work that they're doing.
Thank you so much, again, for your leadership, and thank you for sharing that. I think it's really important to remember that these are the workers that actually help save the auto industry by giving up defined benefit pension plans, by giving up salary increases, wage increases, benefit increases at that very time when we needed them to, because they care so much about making sure that we have a competitive auto industry. And I know that that has been everything that you've worked for as well, so thank you so much. Next, I'd like to yield time to the wonderful gentlelady from Illinois, Delia Ramirez, who is also on our executive board for the Congressional Progressive Caucus, also has been a champion for workers and for justice throughout her career, and we're just so delighted that she's now here in Congress to do that work. Representative Ramirez.
Thank you, Chairwoman. Today, earlier in committee, we were talking about economy and we were talking about numbers. And so I want to continue the conversation on numbers. Approximately $25 million. That's the amount reported that was earned by Stellantis CEO in 2022. A 77% increase over the former CEO's salary in 2019. Nearly $21 million, the reported earnings of Ford CEO, and that was up 21% from the salary of the former CEO in 2019. Approximately $30 million, the paycheck of General Motors CEO, an increase of 34% compared to 2019. Not long ago, a CEO defended their paycheck by saying, and I quote, 92% of my raise is based on the performance of the company. You see, I too believe that when a company does great financially, the ones who worked to make it a reality should see the fruits of their efforts. So when we say that a record high salary raise is due to the record high performance of a company, we should ask ourselves, how was that performance made possible? And the truth is that there's only one answer. The answer is that nearly 150,000 United Auto workers who are out on the streets today urging these companies for parity are the reason for this performance. And they're urging their companies for their earned benefits. They're urging their companies for stronger protection and a place in the industry's future, the clean energy economy. Mr. Speaker, as the proud daughter of hardworking immigrant parents who work long hours of minimum wage jobs, my mother is still today a home care worker. They did this just to put food on our table, a roof over our heads, and keep the lights on. It is my honor to stand here in full support of UAW workers and every single worker fighting for their future. Workers, they are the backbone of our middle class and our economy. And we know that when they thrive, we all thrive. Time and time again, workers are demonstrating to us that the power we hold when we come together to bargain for better wages, benefits, and working conditions is a benefit for all of us. And I know that we will succeed again. So today, I stand with auto workers in their fight to secure the contract that they deserve. It is time that we give our auto workers the parity and support they need and they've already earned. Know that in me, you will always find someone who stands ready to protect and support all workers' right to fair wages, safe and dignified working conditions, universal health care, and democracy in the workplace. It's what the Congressional Progressive Caucus stands for. It is what I stand for, and it is why I'm so honored to be able to speak today in Special Order Hour. I yield back to Chairwoman.
Thank you so much, Representative Ramirez. And now it's my great honor to yield time to a colleague who serves on the Education and Labor Committee with me, has been, again, at the forefront of championing labor issues, and is from the great state of California, Representative Mark DeSaulnier.
Thank you, Madam Chair of the Caucus. Thank you, Mr. Speaker. And I want to stand in solidarity with my colleagues and the 150,000 members of the United Auto Workers fighting for fair pay and safer working conditions. In high cost of living areas like the area I represent in the Bay Area, cost of living adjustments are necessary to ensure that workers have a livable standard in their community with their job. Over the past decade, the big three automakers almost doubled their profits, much of it with the help from the United States government. These profits totaled $250 billion. The CEO pay increased almost 40% just in the last 4 years. Unfortunately, pay for the workers hasn't come nearer to following suit. Though the strikes are currently ongoing in 3 states, their outcome will have impacts on and provide benefits to the quality of life for auto workers across the country. As a member of both the House Committee on Transportation and Infrastructure and the Committee on Education and Labor, I am especially aware of the implications these negotiations will have on the electric vehicle transition. As a former union member myself, I believe we need to ensure strong labor protections for this new and fast-growing industry, which provides a historic opportunity to both support workers and provide for just and sustainable economic transition. I thank the UAW members for their sacrifice and their commitment. I thank them nationwide for standing up for what is right, and what is right not just for their members, but for the future of this country, and I yield back.
Thank you, Representative DeSaulnier. Now it's a great privilege to yield time to the ranking member of the Small Business Committee and a member of the Congressional Progressive Caucus Executive Board, somebody who has truly seen around the world the plight of workers and the need for justice. Representative Nydia Velazquez from New York.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Mr. Speaker, I rise today in solidarity with UA members across the country fighting for a fair contract. As we stand here today, over 12,000 auto workers are striking in Michigan, Missouri, and Ohio. Over 100,000 UAW stand ready to do what is necessary to secure better wages, benefits, and working conditions. Their priorities are not extreme. In the past decade, the big three automakers made an astronomical $250 billion in profits. During that same time, CEO pay at these companies has increased 40%, while workers' wages have increased only 6%. These record profits were built on the back of workers. Today, UAW members are demanding that they receive their fair share of this record windfall. This is not extreme. It is what these workers are entitled to. The big three automakers must recognize this and negotiate with UAW in good faith to resolve this standoff with justice and fairness. Thank you, and I yield back.
Thank you, Representative Velazquez. I wanted to take a minute, just in case anybody who's out there listening has been interested in the concept of strikes. I think it's important to say that striking is not an inherently bad or inherently good thing. It is not a failure of our systems. In fact, it is a tool that is used to rebalance power between employers and workers. Employers don't have any right to pay unsustainable wages. They don't have any right to put forward unsustainable benefits. They don't have a right to keep families unstable by filling their workforce with workers that they just name as temporary, even though sometimes they've worked for 8 or 10 years. They don't have any right to put the burden of a worker's retirement on families or on governments, particularly when so many of these auto workers have spent generations working for these companies and building these companies. Employers have no such rights. Striking is actually the noble way that workers can reset the power dynamic so that they and their families can get what they deserve. And they make the decision to strike very, very soberly. If you listen to many of the auto workers that are on the picket lines today, they talk about how they have been saving, preparing for this moment. They've been not going to movies. They've been not spending on things that they might otherwise spend on, because they know that in striking, what they're doing is fighting not only for their wages and benefits and working conditions, they're actually fighting for the wages, the benefits, and the working conditions of generations of workers to come. Perhaps even their sons, their daughters, their children, their grandchildren, to be able to have good jobs. And I think that's a really important thing to think about, because for us, our job, I think, is, as the community of those workers, to support that decision, especially when inequality is hurting our society so badly. And here in Congress, I think our job as members of Congress is to make sure that we strengthen the right to collectively bargain and to organize, to make sure that workers have that power, to work with management. In many parts of the world, it is not an adversarial relationship. And it is not an adversarial relationship because both management and workers understand that a company can do better when management supports workers, when workers are paid well. And of course, by the way, when workers' wages go up, they spend more. When they spend more, their communities do better, their businesses do better, everyone does better. But the tragedy of the last many decades, really accompanied by policy that has forced these changes, is that trickle-down economics doesn't work. What actually happens in trickle-down economics is a few people at the very top get rich and everybody else loses out. That is why we have the highest inequality in our country in half a century. It is why not just income inequality, but wealth inequality is at its highest. It is why in the wealthiest country in the world, we have 130 million people who are poor and low wage. And so when workers are striking, it is a reflection, a consequence of bad policy choices that have not furthered the goal of equity and equality and fairness. And it is also a rebalancing of power. I was interested, as I was thinking about this special order hour, that I looked up how many strikes we have seen recently. And just since the beginning of this year, there have been 247 strikes so far that involve 341,000 workers. And when you look at what's happened out of some of the big contracts that we've seen, from the port contracts to the graduate students and the research students in my home state of Washington, the UPS workers, what you're finally seeing with the collective bargaining is the ability to move wages in the right directions. And of course, if that doesn't happen, then the tool of a strike is always on the table as a way to force people to listen to the demands of workers. I think today, as we think about the situation that we're in, everybody understands how important the auto industry is to us in this country. We all understand that we have competition from other countries around the world, and that the way that we are going to make sure that we keep our industry strong is to bring back manufacturing to the United States. That is exactly what Democrats and President Biden have been pushing for with the bipartisan infrastructure bill, with the Inflation Reduction Act, with all of the bills that we have passed with the Chips and Manufacturing Act, the Chips and Science Act. The reality is that we are trying to bring back jobs to the United States and to make sure that they are good union jobs. Unfortunately, there are people who are cynically using the UAW strike to try to say that they stand up for workers, like our former president. He's saying that he's going to go to Michigan. He's going to suddenly appear to speak to the auto workers. And I would just remind anybody who's watching that under the former president, we lost hundreds of thousands of jobs that were offshored. We didn't make the American economy more competitive. We didn't bring back good union jobs. In fact, my colleagues across the aisle have opposed us almost unanimously. We have some Republicans who have stuck with us on the PRO Act to advance collective bargaining. We have tried to move forward increases to the minimum wage. We have done all of the things on the Democratic side with very little, if no, Republican support, depending on the bill, to make sure that we are strengthening the middle class and the bottom, creating a bottom-up and middle-out economy that benefits all of us. Nobody's against people earning profits, but what is wrong is to earn those profits at the cost of the workers who actually make those profits for you. That is wrong. And that's why we are so proud to stand in solidarity with the auto workers, with the United Auto Workers. We thank the President, Sean Fain, for his strength of negotiating and for his clarity of vision, for his moral call, for everybody to do better. Because when everybody does better, everybody does better. When only a few people at the very top do better, everyone suffers. And so, Mr. Speaker, I hope that the striking auto workers across the country know that the Congressional Progressive Caucus, that Democrats, House Democrats, stand with them in this very difficult time. And we promise that we will continue to protect workers, to protect collective bargaining, to expand collective bargaining, and to make sure that workers everywhere enjoy the rights and the dignity that they deserve. And with that, we have no further speakers, so I now move that the House adjourn.